Who are the NFL's most improved teams going into this season, man? I got a few of them for you. Let's start off with the Washington Commanders. Washington made a lot of good signings in free agency. They brought in a lot of Dallas Cowboy players who followed Dan Quinn from Dallas to Washington. But outside of the former Cowboy players that they brought in, you signed Frankie Louisville, who was one of the Carolina Panthers' best players on defense. He was the heart and soul of that unit. And to me, he's the most underrated linebacker in the NFL right now. You also bring along his fellow teammate in Jeremy Chin, who I really wanted to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. This is somebody who is really versatile. Not only is he a safety, but he can play linebacker. He can play nickel. You can line him on any position of the secondary, and he's going to have a big impact. You also bring in a really good draft class, Jaden Daniels, Jazon Newton, who to me was really underrated. I thought he was going to be a lock for the first round. He's a fantastic pass rusher. I think he's really good against the run as well. This is somebody who has the potential to be a really big contributor right away out the gate for the Commanders. And then you get defensive back out of Michigan, Mike Sanders still. He's a true slot corner, really good tackler, really physical, good man-to-man coverage corner. The Commanders definitely are a way better team this year than what they were going into last season around this time. They finished with one of the worst records in the league last year. I easily think they got a strong chance to win 8-9 games, and maybe they could compete for the NFC East title year one under Dan Quinn. The Chicago Bears, you talk about a team that had a massive overhaul on offense. It doesn't get any bigger than what the Chicago Bears did with bringing in Caleb Williams, number 1 overall, to replace Justin Fields. You potentially could have the first quarterback in franchise history to throw for over 4,000 yards in a single season. And Caleb Williams could do this in his first year ever in the National Football League. And then you give him the greatest supporting cast that we've seen in recent history for a first-year quarterback. You trade for Keenan Allen. You draft Roma Dunze, who Caleb has already built a really good friendship with throughout the draft process. You also signed running back DeAndre Swift. With what Chicago has this season on both sides of the football, offense and defense, this should easily be a team that's a lock to make it into the playoffs. Now, how high of a seed are they going to be? I can't tell you that. They either could be the last seed or they could be as high as the number 1 or number 2 seed. That's how good Chicago could be this year. They have a good enough defense where even if Caleb Williams has a few games that he struggles in, that defense can carry and win them a few games. If Caleb Williams is as good as what we expect him to be, though, and he's consistent, Chicago not only is going to be in the postseason, but they definitely could end up winning their division last year after being tied for last in the North. How about the Los Angeles Chargers, though? Now, there's been a lot said about the Chargers' lack of talent, but when you bring in Jim Harbaugh and a really good coaching staff, he has Jesse Minter following him along from Michigan to the pros as his defensive coordinator. There are going to be a lot of issues that caused the Chargers to underachieve last year that are going to be fixed because of better coaching, such as the coverage bust on defense, the missed tackles, and just the lack of inspiration that LA seemed to play with on the defensive end of things. You're not going to see that with Jim Harbaugh coaching. You're going to see a way more disciplined team. You're going to see a team that's going to be better at getting the most out of Justin Herbert. You got a really good offensive line. They had a fantastic draft class. I know not a lot of you Chargers fans were happy about the decision to get Joe Alt, but with them, you now solidify that offensive line for being no worse than the top 10 unit. Lad McConkey, should be able to come in and be your number one target for Justin Herbert. He was my 5th ranked wide receiver coming out. Incredible route runner, has really fast feet, great hands, creates a lot of separation. Those are 4 big traits that normally determine how good a wide receiver is going to be. And Lat McConkey checks all 4 boxes. Junior Colson was regarded by most analysts to be the best linebacker coming out of this past year's class. You get him as well. And I like you bringing in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins to be your 1-2 punch at running back, because they already have a lot of familiarity with Greg Roman and his system from when he was the OC down in Baltimore. The Chargers are one of those teams that you can make a huge mistake betting against them if you're just looking at what they have from a talent standpoint. Not every team you can make a fair assumption just because they're not the most talented that they're also going to be not a good team. There are teams that end up overachieving every year, not because they got a great team and people were wrong about them coming into the season, but because they're well coached. If you have good coaching, that can elevate a team that doesn't have good talent because they play to the strength and the philosophy of the head coach. And what does Jim Harbaugh want to implement? He wants to implement a physical, hard-nosed brand of football that the Chargers, I feel, are equipped to play at a really high level this season. They went 5-12 last year, last place in the AFC West. You definitely are going to see a major increase in the win column, and they should be a playoff team this season. The Houston Texans. You may say, JT, how better did Houston get when they were already a good team? Well, you take a team that surprised everybody last year. Most of us didn't even think that the Texans were going to have a winning record. Not only do you go to above 500, but you win the AFC South as well with the ascension of CJ Stroud. How did you improve this offseason, though? Well, you get Stephon Diggs, you got Joe Mixon. You should have easily a top 3, no worse than a top 5 offense this season, right? And defensively, you had the opportunity to get Danielle Hunter, who's going to be a massive improvement to that pass rush. You signed linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair, who is really productive. And I'm a little bit biased about Azeez Al-Shaair because he comes from FAU, and I am a newly announced FAU alumni because I just graduated a few months ago. But Azeez Al-Shaair is going to be an upgrade from who they had playing that linebacker position last year. You also drafted Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia in the earlier rounds of the draft. He's a shutdown corner. He's really sticky in man coverage. He's also really good in press. This is also somebody who doesn't hesitate to come down and lay a big hit on the ball carrier. The Texans, going from being what they were last year to a Super Bowl team coming in to this season, is why I have them as one of the most improved teams going into this year. And lastly, how about the Carolina Panthers? This is somebody who doesn't get talked about a bunch in terms of them being a good team. Most people believe that Carolina is going to be just as bad this season as what they were in 2023. They went 2-15. It was a complete shit show. The coaching was bad. Bryce Young was bad. And the overall team was just awful. But having Dave Canales be the new head coach for Carolina, I think is going to prove to be a massively successful hire for them. He has a good system in place to get the most out of Bryce Young. He also was the reason why Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith had those resurgent seasons the last couple of years. You pair that up with getting Deontay Johnson. You drafted Xavier Legette. You have a way better wide receiving core than what you had last year. You also got 2 really good offensive guards in free agency as well. So you improve the offensive line. You improve Bryce Young's supporting cast. There's no reason why Carolina shouldn't at least get the 6 wins this year. The fact that I see a lot of mock drafts having Carolina picking first, I think is a little bit blasphemous to me, because Carolina really isn't that bad when you look at what they are bringing in and how good Dave Canales has been in his last couple of stops. So this is it for my most improved teams going into the upcoming 2024 NFL season. Let me know some teams that you felt should have been on this list that got left out, and what teams are on here that you feel don't deserve to be on here.